Hey guys, Ramit Sethi here from Growth Lab. Today we're gonna write an email together. I thought it'd be fun to show you exactly how we craft these emails that you get all the time and show you what goes into writing a really great one. So we have about 800,000 people on our email list. We send 5 or more emails a week. That's a lot of stuff. And some of those emails are sales emails where we are selling one of our products. Sometimes though, we send engagement emails, and these are just fun stories, weird stuff that happened to me, maybe a lesson I might want to teach. It's just something cool. That's what we're going to do today. So I want to walk through actually writing something from scratch right here on the spot, and I'm going to show you all the steps that go into writing one of these emails. The way I'm thinking about this email is I have a slot that I want to fill. Right? Let's just say it's like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. I want to send people something cool, something to keep them engaged and just something that's been on my mind. I find it's really helpful to just start thinking about stories. And I have a lot of great stories that happen to me because most of what happens in my emails actually happens outside my apartment. One of the best places that I get ideas for stories to use is when I'm out with my friends. You know, we're out having a couple drinks and I bring up this story that just comes out of my memory. And I think to myself, if that story really landed with my friends, I bet it'd be awesome in an email. So I've got this story I've been thinking about for a while, and it's about when I went to Hawaii when I was like 22 or 23, and I spoke for a national association for credit unions. So let me show you how I would start off by structuring something like this. I'm gonna call this Credit Union Story. And I like to work from outlines. So I'm gonna try to just do a quick outline of what this email might look like. This is a really nice, simple outline here. Just a few lines. And I always start with an intro. And in the intro, if I have a specific story, I might put it there as a bullet point. Like, let's say I had something about shoes, I would just note it there. Then for me in this engagement email, just the story. That's what's gonna make up the bulk of this email. So I've got this story. And then lessons learned. That's just a high level category. Now, I actually am not sure what the lessons learned from this are yet. Sometimes if I'm writing a super long email, I need to know that ahead of time. But here, this is just a fun engagement email. The stakes are kind of low. So I don't know, I'll figure it out as I go along. That's it. I'm gonna write this email. It's gonna be relatively short, and then I'm gonna send it out. Let's see how it goes. So this is my first line. It's not very good. I know that it's not very good, but I'm just getting words on the page, and I'm gonna come back later and do all the editing. I'm gonna keep going. Okay, so right now, I don't love this email. I actually think it's not very good. I don't love the first line. It's kind of boring. It doesn't even make grammatical sense, really. Years ago, I got invited to something for the first time, Hawaii. It's like I'm setting up this big dramatic thing, and then the punchline is just Hawaii. It's not very good. I have this slipper story, which I personally love, but I'm just generally not feeling it. I think if you read this, you'd be like, what's the point of this thing? Like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Slippers and Hawaii, what? So I'm gonna keep going on, but I'm already feeling like I don't love this. But let's just assume that I'll fix this later, because I will. I'm never gonna send something like this out. Okay, this is getting better. I've only written like 2 more paragraphs, but it's flowing a little bit better, right? You can feel that there's a setup going on here, and at least I'm engaged. I do think that sometimes I have a tendency to go a little heavy on the context. So let me set the context, everybody. And sometimes people just don't care. Another phrase that somebody taught me is just get to the meat. Cut all the fat, get to the filet mignon. And I will do that in editing. Let me keep writing. So here you can see I'm trying to build up to something big. So I actually did one thing really well and one thing really badly. the thing that I did well is I built up this crescendo. But that was all about to change. Very dramatic. If you've read to there, then it is irresistible for you to keep reading. You're gonna have to keep reading on to the next line. That's awesome. However, look at this section. I gave my speech and everything was going well. That is such a just pedestrian statement that it's just filler. It's what we call marketese. You might as well just not even put it in there. I gave my speech and everything was going well. Who cares? What's the drama? I had them in the palm of my hand. What I'm trying to do here is really show that this was going well, but instead of showing it, I'm actually just telling them. I don't really feel anything as a reader. So I notice this now. I want to go back and actually build up a little bit of drama before I take them here to the crescendo. And that's where the real cool part of the email is going to happen. Okay, look at the difference in that copy. This is a perfect example of taking something that's kind of mediocre that many people would just say, okay, well, I wrote the facts, let me send it out. And as a more advanced copywriter, you can look at it and say, I see what I'm trying to say there, but it's not evoking that emotion. It's not really connecting. And the key thing I saw there was I was telling people, not showing them. And so what I did there was I basically really built up the drama. And all this is true, by the way. I had spent 6 weeks preparing. I had done run-throughs over 50 times. I had prepared, and these senior executives, they're just tables and tables as far as the eye could see. So you're reading this and you're really in that room with me. This is what makes great engagement copy great copy. It's that you are there in that room with me. And by the way, look at this drama. I subtly tweaked the thing at the end. Until the Q&A. You can't stop reading now. So now we're really getting into the meat. Just a great reminder that in every time you write copy, you want to step back and say, is this dramatic enough? Am I actually communicating in the right way? And in this example, you can see that before it wasn't very good. Now it's a little bit better. You'll notice that I was just about to write fortunately, and I switched it to luckily. Again, I've used fortunately in a lot of copy myself, but I always want to try to use words that people would use if they were talking out loud. So if you were just hanging out with your friends and telling them the story, would you say, fortunately, I was able to get some good questions? You say, no. Luckily, I got a couple great questions, and that put me back on track. Okay? Use words that normal people use. It's going to make your copy so much more relatable. So there's something going on here. It's getting good, but I just feel like something's off. I'm not quite sure what. This is really the crescendo. Like I totally screwed up. I said this thing. Everybody kind of hates me. The air is sucked out of the room, but it's not landing. And I'm not sure exactly why, but I'll try to talk it out with you. First off, I set it up. I said, oh God. And you kind of know this is the moment where it's all going down. But I'd say this thing, I did not understand what was happening, so I just started answering. And that's true, I didn't know that I was basically being ambushed. So I think I need to either delete that, or if I'm gonna keep it there, I need to close that loop. I also think that this concept I used of dots and dashes is cool, but what does this mean? This part in all caps, it needs to be really clear. It's like when you yell in the middle of a joke. People need to understand what you're saying. And I added this bullet points because I want to sort of break up the monotony and just kind of make it visually stand out. But I just feel like so far this is like a B minus, and it could be a solid A. I'm kind of stuck actually right now, so let me go back up to my outline and see where I am. So we've done the intro, we did the Hawaii thing. What happened? I sort of need to fix that. And then it looks like lessons learned. That's what I need to do here. Okay, so what I learned and how it applies to you, the reader. So sometimes I get stuck, and we have a lot of emails that we have to write. And one of the things that I used to do when I was a junior copywriter was I would get stuck and I would just sit here and just sort of get paralyzed. The thing that I've gotten a lot better at is knowing when a few more hours of work will benefit me. And sometimes I'm just totally stuck. And I know now, as a more advanced copywriter, ask for help. So I've got a bunch of people around me who I can ping for help. So do you, I'm sure. Friends, peers, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever, and just say like, what do you think about this? Give me some feedback. So I'm actually gonna do that. It's almost like asking for a lifeline. And I'm gonna reach out to our editor-in-chief, and I'm going to just show him what I've got so far and be like, dude, lot to fix in the earlier stuff, but I need lessons learned. How do I articulate this? So let me see if I can do that right now. Hang on a sec. So that is the benefit of just being able to pull your head out of water and ask somebody for help. So Sean told me a couple of great things. Lesson learned, stop being so arrogant. And lesson learned, I'm not gonna make that mistake again. I'm gonna think about my audience and do my homework before I get into a room or launch a product or create anything. That's awesome. And of course, that makes it pretty clear what the benefit is for you. You're reading this through Growth Lab, you wanna start and grow your online business. It's pretty clear. Exactly what I need to do is exactly what you need to do. So let me try to see if I can write that. And then we can go back and do a final edit and we'll be done. So as I'm thinking out loud here, I'm thinking, to be honest, back then in early 20s, I was so concerned with me giving the right presentation that I never actually stopped to put myself in their shoes and think about what would a 68-year-old senior VP of this credit union want to get out of this? Like, what would they want to get out of this? I was so busy just thinking about myself. I certainly did not ask any of them, which would have been smart, but I didn't even really think about it. So let me see if I can work that in here too. Okay, that's pretty good. I actually really like that. In this way, what I just did was I shared 3 different things that I would do today. And these are actually really meaty. They're specific. People can walk away saying like, wow, I never would even thought of that. And the only problem is that most people are not giving a talk to a bunch of senior executives. So I need to wrap it up. And if we go back and look at the outline, how it applies to you, right? So I need to figure out a way to kind of bring this down to earth for everyone. Maybe you're not speaking to a bunch of senior execs, but you got a product or you're doing something. How do I connect this? Before I finish this off, here's my question to you, a little pop quiz. How would you end this email? I want you to click pause and write the end of this email. Don't wait. Yes, I'm gonna do it in a couple minutes. You can compare your ending to mine, but I want you to click pause and leave a comment and write the ending of this email. Let's take a look at how everybody else would do it, and then you can compare it to mine. Go ahead, do it right now. That's what I would do. So in the end here, I kind of wrapped it up relatively quickly. It's kind of like when you call up your cell phone company and you finally finish the call and then you go, thanks so much, I appreciate it, and go, thank you for calling this company, and we really appreciate your business. And then I'm just like, please, I want to get off the phone. I have the lesson, I taught them the lesson, I'm gonna hammer it home once more and then I'm done, all right? The other thing that's really key here is this call to action. I would say about 90% of the time I add a call to action. It could be clicking a link, it could be buying something. In this case, I actually just want to hear from them. Like, I actually want to know, what did you find surprising about this email? This does a couple of things. Number one, it gets them thinking. The other thing is it actually forces them to reflect, right? Reflect and write back to me, which is great because it helps with your email score. It also gives me super valuable information. What they like about this email, what did they not care about? I'm gonna read every one of those responses and it's gonna help me become a better copywriter. And I do this every single day. I read over 1,000 emails from people, just helping me get better at knowing which of my stories are hitting. So I've created a virtuous cycle. I write, I get feedback, I write better, I do it again and again and again. And that is how you write an email. Okay, you might think you're done, but you're not done. Now we get to the most important part of the writing process, and that's the editing, okay? A great copywriter or a great product developer has all three of these skills. The first is knowing if something is good or bad. The second is knowing why it's good or bad. Okay, that's actually quite a bit more advanced. You might just read it and say this sucks, but you don't know why. And then finally, the most advanced level is actually knowing how to make it better. That is extremely challenging. So I will show you all three levels of that right now in our editing process. I can tell you that the introduction to this is not good. I think honestly, any of us could tell. It's just not quite hitting. Years ago, I got invited, who cares? The why for why this is not good is it's boring, it's not engaging, doesn't tell me something I don't know, very important copywriting principle. So how I'm gonna fix this? I'm gonna make it better. I'm gonna write a better, more compelling hook. And I'm gonna do it right in front of you. Let's take a look. A lot of times I can just tell when I'm writing my own copy and I smile and I even laugh. Of course I laugh at my own jokes, they're hilarious. But I was just starting to smile there as I finally got it. I could see, yes, this is gonna work. So look what I just did. Now in just 3 lines, this is such a better introduction. Let me read it out loud to you. See how it sounds. Years ago, I got invited to speak in Hawaii for a National Association of Credit Unions. For a 23-year-old guy who was trying to grow his blog, this was awesome. For a 23-year-old guy with limited public speaking experience, this was terrifying. Now we've got a hook. Simple. Right? I cut all that nonsense about slippers and Hawaii, just get to the point. I've got a little parallelism going here. People are a little interested. Okay, they'll read on to the next line. So 2 key things I just did in that editing process. Number 1, I read it out loud. Read your copy out loud, especially when you're beginning. It's gonna tell you everything. The second part is, I don't need every single part of every single email to be perfect. All I need to do is get them to read to the next line. This feels weird. I felt that weird bubbling in my stomach. You see how when you say it out loud, it just doesn't sound right? Part of nailing that first skill of a copywriter is knowing, is something good or not? And one of the easiest ways to do that is to actually say it out loud. Let me show you again. I felt that weird bubbling in my stomach. And for the first few minutes, I was nervous. My voice was shaking. Oh God. Something just, see that look on my face? That's the look when you are reading bad copy. That's pretty much the look on my face 99% of my life when I read other people's copy. I go like this, the fuck? Fucking writing, learn how to write. Delete. I'll never put that line in my emails. Let's see what we're gonna do instead. Now this is getting good. Let me read this whole introduction out loud. See how it sounds with my voice. Years ago, I got invited to speak in Hawaii for a National Association of Credit Unions. For a 23-year-old guy who was trying to grow his blog, this was awesome. For a 23-year-old guy with limited public speaking experience, this was terrifying. These credit unions were desperate to figure out how to reach younger members. Credit unions call their customers members for one big reason. Their average member is in their 60s. That's a huge problem for them. It's not a good sign when your customer base is getting older and older and you don't have anyone to replace them. Man, oh man, I went all in. I spent 6 weeks preparing a new deck for this talk. I had all new slides, new talking points, even new jokes. I probably practiced it 50 plus times. By the time I walked in that room, I knew it cold. But I'd never spoken to a group this big. But I'd never spoken to a group this large. But I'd never spoken to a group this big. When I walked in that room and saw 250 senior execs from credit unions all across the country, it was insanely nerve-wracking. This was the biggest crowd I'd ever spoken to, and it was one of those huge ballrooms where the tables go on and on forever. Let me pause right there. I can think, as I'm saying this out loud, what makes you really feel that nervousness? For me, when I get really nervous, I get that sweat coming out of my back. So I want to write that down because that is true for me. When I walked in that room, it was insanely nerve-wracking. I felt my back start sweating. This was the biggest crowd I'd ever spoken to. It was one of these huge ballrooms where the tables go on and on forever. So socially awkward 23-year-old Ramit was nervous. My voice was shaking. I was sweaty. But then suddenly I got into the groove. Have you ever been telling a story with your friends and everything just starts clicking? In my talk, jokes were landing. The crowd was loving it. I even improvised a story right there on the spot, and it was a killer. Anyone who's spoken professionally knows that moment where everything just works. And for that talk, in that room, everything did. I was owning the room. Until the Q&A. That's when things started to go wrong. The first question I got went like this. I enjoyed your talk. You seem very confident about yourself. Can you tell us, is there anything you've made a mistake about? Translation, you seem like a cocky asshole. Are you? I'm gonna ask you a question to see if you really are. Ramit, I didn't really get what was happening at the moment, but I knew I had rubbed this guy the wrong way. As I was stumbling over my response, I realized I'd come across too arrogantly. Not really a surprise, especially for me at the time, but also a tough lesson to learn that would take me many more years to internalize. So I mumbled some answer, told him, sure, I've made lots of mistakes, and tried to move on. I give myself a C- for that answer. Luckily, I got a few more questions that helped get me back on track. Someone asked me about the habits of millennials, and someone else asked me how I get traffic to my blog. I give myself a solid A for those answers. But then, oh God, an older gentleman in the back raised his hand and started his question. Thank you for being here, he said. I was interested when you mentioned that you recommend specific financial products to your readers because they trust your judgment. He went on, what credit union do you tell them you use? I did not understand what was happening, so I just started answering. Well, I've been really open with all the banks and accounts I use, but I don't use a credit union because they don't serve my I couldn't finish my sentence over the loud sound of all the air whooshing out of the room. Let me pause here. I think you can hear that this email has gone from really good to kind of shitty. This crescendo, this key part of the email, it's not quite landing. I got to do a little bit of editing here and then we're going to be good to go. So let's take a look. Where does it go off track, by the way? Can you spot it? So this line is gold. This line is all good. Here's where it goes wrong. I did not understand what was happening, so I just started answering. It's just kind of weird. It's very, there's no rhythm in the language. And also, what are you even saying? So I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to try to rewrite that. Okay, this is what I did. Take a look. He went on. What credit union do you tell them you use? This old fox was laying a trap, but I was too dumb to see it. Instead of realizing what he was doing, I just started answering the question. Well, I've been really open with all my banks and accounts I use. Well, I've been really transparent with all the accounts and banks I use, but I don't use a credit union because I don't serve. Whoosh! That was the sound of the air rushing out of the room as 250 credit union executives realized they hated me. If there's one thing you don't do, it's go to a conference of 250 senior executives in the credit union industry and tell them you don't use their product. Would I roll up to a Honda dealership in a Toyota Camry? Of course not. So why would I go to a conference of credit union execs and tell them I use their competitor? This is super important. Even though I might have been technically right about my point that credit unions weren't serving millennials' needs, the minute I told them I don't use a credit union is the minute I lost the crowd. In short, stupid 23-year-old Ramit, don't insult your audience, especially if you're their guest speaker, their industry needs younger members, and you are their target market. Lessons learned. You might have the best information in the world, but if your audience doesn't like you, you're dead. If they can't relate to you, none of it matters. So spend time on that, the art of connecting with them, listening to them, and thinking proactively about what they want to get out of the talk. Thinking back to my early 20s self, I didn't even spend 10 minutes thinking about what a 60-something senior VP of a credit union would want to get out of the talk. I certainly didn't ask them. If I were to give this talk today, here's what I would do differently. And then I go on to read the rest of the email. I talk about what I learned and I close the email out. That is how we write an engagement email for our list of over 800,000 people. Key takeaways from writing this email. Number one, the best copy comes from living your life. Close your computer, go outside, make some friends. That's where you're gonna get the best stories and insights to share with your readers. Number two, keep a list of stories. You might not know what to do with that list right now, but one day when you're writing copy, it's gonna be super helpful to have that list. Next, start writing even if you don't know what the conclusion is gonna be. I didn't know what my lessons learned would be, and I actually got stuck there, which brings me to my next insight. When you get stuck, don't bury your head in the sand, ask for help. If you have coworkers, ask them. If you don't have that, ask a friend. If you don't have friends, I don't know what to tell you, man. This is not therapy. Get a friend. Basically, ask people for their advice and what they think about the copy. As you get better at writing copy, you're gonna learn those 3 skills. Is it good or bad? Why is it good or bad? And how do I make it good? Those can take years and years, that's fine. If you wanna shortcut that process, and if you've watched this far, you're probably interested in copy. We've actually got an amazing course on writing copy. We show you exactly how we do it in even more detail than this, talk about blog posts, sales pages, emails, all kinds of stuff from the very beginning to quite advanced. It's called Call to Action. You should check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'd love to see you in the Call to Action course.